Welcome back to another episode of the Life's Playbook podcast. This is episode 9 of my show, approaching episode 10 and approaching up to 1 month officially of my show. I'm excited. I'm pleased with the direction that the show is going. I am pleased with the amount of views that my channel has gotten and that my content has been getting. I am very well pleased with how the show has been going so far, first month. Couldn't have done it without you guys, the viewers. I ask that you guys continue to give me your love and support for the show, as it'll only keep getting better and better, and it'll only keep growing, and new things will keep coming as I try to stay consistent with the show. So, with that being said, I appreciate all the views, all the likes and comments I've been getting over these past couple of days. With that being said, this is episode 9 of the Life's Playbook podcast. It's time to dive right into today's action. Starting with a quick housekeeping reminder, the football world, college football national championship is tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Ohio State, Notre Dame facing off tomorrow for a chance at the big one to win it all. Obviously, I got Ohio State winning that one. I'm an Ohio State fan, huge Ohio fan in general. Go Buckeyes. I will be watching that game. And episode 8 pretty much is a preview to my thoughts on that game and my thoughts on the key points and key points of emphasis for both Ohio State and Notre Dame in order for each team to have a fair chance to win the big chip. So, national championship is tomorrow on Monday. And wrapping up the divisional round this week, Eagles, Rams, 4:30 today, and Bills, Ravens, 6:30 today. So, wrapping up the divisional round, 2 very good games to finish off the divisional round. With that being said, the divisional round was started yesterday with the Chiefs taking on the Texans and the Commanders taking on the Lions. Chiefs and Lions were both 1 seeds, their respective conference. Chiefs 1 seed in the AFC and the Lions 1 seed in the NFC. There was a major upset. I think it is no surprise that the Commanders beat the Lions yesterday. A major upset to a lot of sports fans out there that had the Lions winning that game and that had the Lions on their parlays. Major upset. I'll get into that in today's episode. With that being said, let's get into today's episode 9, the Life's Playbook podcast. And as always, game never ends here at the Life's Playbook podcast. Let's dive into today's action, starting with a rundown of the Chiefs-Texans game. Chiefs-Texans game kicked off the divisional round yesterday. The Texans took on the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. It was a cold game, 3rd coldest game in Texans franchise history. And I gotta tell you, after watching that game, made me rethink a lot of things about the Kansas City Chiefs. And I gotta tell you, watching the Kansas City Chiefs is enough to piss somebody off. Because, let me tell you, I was getting frustrated with some of the calls, and I think a lot of the non-Chiefs fans and viewers that were watching that game were getting frustrated with some of the calls throughout that game. And it highlights one of the problems with the NFL in and of itself, and I think those calls need to be fixed and addressed come the offseason. But back to the game specifically, the Texans did end up losing this game. They lost this game 4-23. It was not a good game at all. Not in terms of score, but in terms of play, team play, especially on the Texans' part and on the Chiefs' part. And again, there were a lot of game-altering and questionable calls that game. Not going to get into a ton of them. I'm sure you guys who have watched that game already know the calls that I'm talking about. Very game-changing and very game-altering. With that being said, let's talk on behalf of the Texans. Let's talk about how they did and what they could have done to probably win this game. Well, Texans, it was a great season. Great season. I didn't expect the Texans to beat the Chiefs. I didn't expect the Texans to get very far. They got to where they were last year. They beat the Chargers in the first round, got bounced in the second round by none other than the same team, the Kansas City Chiefs. Texans, it was a great season, but the Chiefs are your hump that you can't get over. And you're not going to get over the hump of the Kansas City Chiefs with the number one problem, in my opinion, from the Texans. On behalf of the Texans, the number one problem with the Houston Texans is that offensive line. Now, what do I mean by the offensive line is the number one problem? You can't argue that the Texans were heavily undermanned. And to some extent, they were. Again, Tank Dell was not playing; he was out, and Stephon Diggs was out all season. They were undermanned, and they had to rely on a lot of wide receiver fours and fives. And those wide receiver fours and fives, they stepped up. Hutchinson stepped up big time for C.J. Stroud, and Nico Collins, wide receiver one. He was there. He was still reliable as ever. But that offensive line for the Houston Texans, that offensive line is atrocious. Atrocious to many degrees. Now, yesterday they didn't play exactly in the first half. I didn't think they played exactly terrible. They held up their own. They protected C.J. Stroud. They didn't let up too many sacks in that first half. And in the first half, that offensive line, they looked good. They were getting good blocks up front to open up the run game. The pass protection was there in the first half. But in that second half, it just fell apart completely. C.J. Stroud was running for his life. Kansas City defense was all over him. They had him out of sync. They had him out of rhythm. It was just a bad time to be C.J. Stroud and receive snaps from that offensive line. That offensive line is abysmal. I think we all know, as NFL fans, we all know where the Texans' focus should be this offseason. It should be revamping that offensive line. It is not good, and it needs to be fixed because if that same offensive line continues to be there for C.J. Stroud, they're not going to get very far in the playoffs. I can tell you that. Now, don't get me wrong; they have some Pro Bowl level offensive linemen on that line. Laramie Tunsil, he's a Pro Bowl offensive lineman for sure. He's made a Pro Bowl before, so they've got talent on that offensive line. But I mean, these last couple of games for the Houston Texans, I think anybody who's watched Texans games throughout the season and anybody who's watched these last couple playoff games, the offensive line has not looked good. C.J. Stroud has had to make a lot of plays on his feet. He's had to scramble a lot. He's been sacked a lot. The Texans' offensive line in that second half, they gave up 8 sacks. 8 sacks in the whole game. Total. 8. C.J. Stroud, he got bullied. He got tormented. They were all over him. He was out of sync. Again, he didn't really have the weapons that he needed to combat the Chiefs, defense with, no Stephon Diggs and no Tank Dell. He was undermanned. His offensive line, it wasn't that good in the second half. The protection wasn't there. The run game, it was still there. They were still getting good blocks up front to open up that run game. But there's really nobody else on that, on the offense or defense to really put the blame on in that game except the offensive line. I mean, had those 8 sacks not been there, I think it could have been a completely different game with the exception of, those questionable penalties towards the end of the game in the second half that really swayed the game in the Chiefs' favor. And again, that needs to be fixed and addressed in the offseason. Those penalties and the sliding, that can't happen. You can't have, Patrick Mahomes doing what he did yesterday and, messing with defenders, and then he takes a late slide and he draws a penalty, and then he tries to draw another penalty going to, again, like a couple drives later. You can't, quarterbacks can't be allowed to get away with that type of stuff, and they can't be allowed to, benefit off of that type of stuff because those types of penalties can really alter an NFL game, and they can really shift the favor and the momentum to the home team's advantage or the winning team's advantage. So that's got to be something that's got to be addressed in the offseason. That's got to be something that's got to be patched in the offseason because, this isn't the NBA. We don't flop our way to victory. We don't, try to draw fouls when we can. We don't try to draw fouls constantly like the NBA. No shade to the NBA, but it's no secret that, that's what many players in the NBA do. They flop a lot and they get a lot of calls called because of it, and it just ruins the game and it makes it boring. When you're watching your favorite star shoot free throws every other possession, we don't want to see that. This isn't the NBA, it's the NFL. You're supposed to be physical. These players, these defensive players are supposed to be physical. They're supposed to get after the quarterback. They're supposed to be allowed to sack the quarterback and whatnot. And, as of recent, and it's not just with the Chiefs, it's happened. There have been questionable calls in other games too. But the Chiefs is where it's most profoundly seen. So that's got to be something questionable penalties in the referee, position, that's got to be something that's got to be addressed in the offseason, and it's got to be, handled in the offseason. It's got to be patched. But back to the Texans, that offensive line's got to get it's got to get worked on. It's got to get revamped. The Texans aren't going to get anywhere. They'll probably win the division these for the next couple of years because that division in and of itself isn't very strong. But they got to fix that offensive line if they really want to make a push. They got to fix that offensive line. They got to revamp that offensive line. They got to get a stronger offensive line if they really want to make an actual playoff run and not get bounced in the second round every year. That's to me the biggest problem with the Texans, and that was besides the questionable penalties yesterday. If those two things weren't a factor, the Texans probably would have had a chance to win this game because for the longest time, and between the middle eight of the game in that middle eight section of the game, from the second quarter transitioning into the third quarter, the Texans really defensively and offensively they had a chance to tie the game and come back and win it possibly. It was 12-13 for the longest time in the game. But again, those questionable penalties settled in, and the offensive line let up 8 sacks overall in a game. I mean, that can't happen. That can't happen. Texans, I mean, the only way you're gonna make a deep run is if you fix that offensive line. Keep your receivers healthy. Fix that offensive line. I think the Texans could do much better than they did this year. But it wasn't a terrible season overall. There were a lot of things that could have been done differently, and there were the pass protection could have been better. But it is what it is. Got to get that offensive line fixed if you're the Houston Texans. You got to put a lot of your focus into that offensive line, looking into the draft and looking into next season. On the Chiefs' behalf, on the other hand, they didn't really look that. In the first half, they didn't really look that. They didn't really look like a number one team in the first half. Second half, they started to figure things out and they started to look good again. They started to look like a team, like a number one team. But I think we can all agree in that first half, the Chiefs didn't really look all that impressive, and they looked vulnerable. And again, the Texans could have had a chance to possibly come back and take a lead. But again, in the first half, the Chiefs didn't really look that impressive. They didn't really look like anything special. You could argue it was, the week off rust or whatnot, or maybe it was some offensive miscues. But, the Chiefs, in the first half, they didn't really look that impressive. Again, the second half, they really started to cook with hot oil. They really started to put the pedal to the metal. Again, there were a lot of questionable calls that kind of helped with the Chiefs' success in the second half. Again, those calls need to be addressed and they need to be fixed in the offseason because, the things that Patrick Mahomes can get away with, you can't allow that to happen. But anyways, in the second half, they started to get things going. Travis Kelce had a historic night yesterday. He joins Jerry Rice to be the second NFL player to have over 2,000 yards in the postseason. So congratulations, Travis Kelce. Had a couple touchdowns last night as well. He had a historic night last night. Congratulations, Travis Kelce, for joining Jerry Rice in an exclusive club, 2,000 yards plus in a postseason. So Travis Kelce looked good. Patrick Mahomes, again, in the second half, he looked better. He looked like he was ready to play. But again, the first half, you could argue that the Chiefs didn't really look that all impressive, and they looked vulnerable at times. But that second half, again, the Chiefs really got things going. In the end, there were some questionable calls in the end that swayed the momentum in the Chiefs' favor. Chiefs get the job done. I picked the Chiefs, oddly enough, to win that game, and they did. They now move on to play the winner of Buffalo and Baltimore. Go Bills. I've never been a bigger Bills fan in my life. Go Bills. Beat the Ravens. But Chiefs end up winning that game. Texans, great season. A lot of missed opportunities. Got to fix that offensive line, especially. Got to put a lot of your attention into that offensive line. But can't let up 8 sacks in the game and expect to still somehow win. The defense for the Texans and the Chiefs played great. They played great, and they both played well enough to keep each team in the game. That game was really based on whose offense was going to get cooking faster, whose offense was going to look better faster in the second half. And in the second half, it was really just the Chiefs moving forward in the second half. First half, the Texans had a chance to play with the Chiefs. And then in the second half, the Chiefs really got things going, and they looked like a number one team. Again, you could argue those questionable penalties also helped, but that's a discussion for another day. I'm not a Chiefs fan. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna fully give my input on those questionable calls. I think I saw them myself, and I think it was kind of bogus that they called them at those times because a lot of those plays. When you look back at that game, a lot of those plays, you could argue they got, the Chiefs got bailed out. But Chiefs get the job done. They advance to play the winner in the AFC Conference Championship. They advance to play the winner of Baltimore or Buffalo. Go Bills. Now, moving on, there was a huge, huge upset yesterday. Very big upset yesterday. It is no secret that the Lions got torched by the Commanders yesterday. And I mean they got torched. It was bad. It was not good at all. It was very unexpected. I personally I didn't watch the whole game myself, but it was not a good game at all for the Lions. It just didn't look good. Jared Goff went out, I think, before halftime after suffering a huge hit off of throwing a interception, and Teddy Bridgewater, I believe, stepped in to take his place, and I believe he played the rest of the game. I could be wrong. Again, I didn't watch the entire game. The Lions fans, if you watch this, please correct me if I make any mistakes. But Teddy Bridgewater did come in and play for Jared Goff, I think, for the rest of the game. Jared Goff just didn't look good in and of himself. He just didn't look good. The Lions offensively just, early in the beginning of the game, they looked good. They were scoring touchdowns. They were doing what they were supposed to do. They looked decent. And then those interceptions came in. And that really, the Commanders really capitalized off of those penalties. And turnovers. The Commanders really profited off of those turnovers. Defensively, both teams were kind of lackluster. I mean, it was a high-scoring game. The Commanders end up winning the game 40-31. Texans lose the game to the Chiefs, by the way, 14-23. The Commanders end up winning 45-31. The defensive performance on both sides was kind of lackluster to a degree. The Commanders' defense really showed up when it mattered most, and they got the turnovers when it mattered most, and those turnovers were a huge hit towards the Lions. It was a huge knock against the Lions, and I got to tell you, if those penalties weren't penalties, I keep saying penalties, turnovers, if those turnovers weren't a thing, it could have been a different game. It could have been a different ball game. Jayden Daniels, let's talk about it team by team and how each team's performance was. Let's talk about it. Jayden Daniels, this dude is historic. I didn't believe all the hype about him at first. I thought he was just going to have another C.J. Stroud rookie season type of run. And we all know what C.J. Stroud did with the Houston Texans and DeMeco Ryans did with the Houston Texans. They revived the Texans franchise. They revived that entire franchise and took them to the playoffs. They beat the Browns in the first round, 2023. And it was a great run for the Texans. It was a great rookie season for C.J. Stroud, and we all thought for a while that was, arguably the best rookie season ever. Best rookie season, at least that was up there. Maybe not ever, but it was up there as one of the best rookie seasons by a rookie quarterback. And then Jayden Daniels happened. Jayden Daniels, the kid is phenomenal. The kid is really something special. He's got a lot of upside, a lot going for him, and he's a cool cat overall, That was a big stage. Playing the Lions in the divisional round, that was a big stage. Nobody expected the Commanders to win 12 games, much less beat the Lions in a divisional game. It was a very big stage, and he performed like he's been in this type of situation for years. He's only a rookie. This is only his first rookie season, and he's doing this type of stuff. He's beaten number one teams out there. He beat the Lions. Now I understand the Lions. Their defense was not where it should have been. They were undermanned heavily. They were injury ridden all over the place. So defensively the Lions just they collapsed. The defense wasn't where it was at, and I understand all the injuries and whatnot. But, I mean, again, can we really take anything away from We can't really discredit Jayden Daniels' game because the kid is phenomenal. At first I didn't really understand the hype behind this guy. I thought he was just going to have a nice little C.J. Stroud type of season. He revived the franchise. Dan Quinn revived the franchise, and it's just been all Jayden Daniels. Terry McLaurin has looked better in recent games in recent year, and this year. The other receivers have stepped up for the Commanders. The run game is there. I mean, looking at the numbers here, Jayden Daniels completed 22 of 31 passes, threw for 299, two touchdowns in a big stage like that against the number one team in the NFC. That's like it doesn't get any better than that. The kid is phenomenal. He's got a lot of upside. He's only a rookie, and he's doing this. He's doing this type of stuff. The run game was there too. The offensive line for the Commanders was great on all levels. The run game was there. Brian Robinson Jr. 15 carries, 77 yards, two touchdowns. Great game. It was quite literally a master class on all levels from this rookie, from the run game, the defensively. It was good. They got two turnovers. It was good. It was great on all levels. I can't stress this enough. How nobody thought that, myself included, nobody thought that the Commanders would be in this situation and that they would you know make it to a divisional round, much less make it to the playoffs. Nobody expected the Commanders to win 12 games. Nobody expected the Commanders to make the playoffs, and nobody expected the Commanders to beat the Lions in any setting, whether that be the regular season or the postseason. And especially on a stage like this with a rookie quarterback with no NFL playoff experience, that's something special. The Commanders got something special on offense, and he's only going to get better. Again, this kid has a lot of upside. If this kid makes it to the Super Bowl, I mean, he's already got an all-time rookie season right now off of beating the Lions. But if this kid makes it to the Super Bowl, yeah, this kid's got the greatest rookie season of all time, rookie quarterback season of all time. Jayden Daniels. If this kid gets to the Super Bowl, dude is already locked as the greatest rookie quarterback of all time. Better than Andrew Luck, better than all of the previous guys, better than C.J. Stroud, his rookie season, better than all of those guys if he gets to the Super Bowl. Now, that's a discussion for another day. I don't know if, he's got it in him to get to a Super Bowl as a rookie. He'll most likely have to face the Rams or the Eagles, and I think those teams might be too much for the Commanders, but that's a discussion for another day. But dude's already got an all-time season. He's already got an all-time rookie season. He's already ran away with the Rookie of the Year. He's already up there. He's already there's a lot of things that can be said about this kid. Again, the Commanders, they got something really special on offense. They got something special to work with. They got something special to continue to coach and continue to, teach him to, his upside is through the roof. His ceiling is way up there. Kid's only going to get better. He's a rookie. Commanders, they get the job done in a very surprising, very good fashion. It's defensively it was a good game. Offensively, it was a phenomenal game. Again, nobody expected the Commanders to be in this position at all, myself included. But they're making history. Jayden Daniels is making history on all levels. They're making history, and I'm all in. I'm all in to see it. I'm all in to watch it. I don't now again. The Super Bowl thing is a discussion for another day. I don't know if Jayden Daniels has it in him again to take on either the Rams or the Eagles. I don't know if he's got it in him again to put on another performance like he did against the Lions. But hey, I'm all for it. I'm all in for the Daniels hype train now after that performance against the Lions. Let's talk about the Lions. Just not a very good game overall for the Lions. Jared Goff threw two interceptions, very bad interceptions too at bad times. He just didn't look like himself. Again, defensively, they didn't look like themselves, but I understand they had a lot of injuries. There were, injury ridden all season long, so I understand it. I mean, the Lions were projected to, essentially blow out the Commanders on all levels, defensively and offensively. The Lions were really projected to, sweep this team. on all levels, and that just wasn't the case. The Commanders really showed up defensively, and they gave the Lions living hell. They gave the Lions a run for their money. They proved everybody wrong. Lions offensively, I mean, got to have a better that type of stuff can't happen. Two interceptions from an experienced quarterback like Jared Goff, it can't happen. Jared Goff has been on this level too many times to throw mistakes like that, throw the game away like that. Now, I'm not saying it's completely on him. You know, the defense is the defense, and they could have stepped up with the guys that they had. But, really the killer for the Lions was the offense. The defense, they did all they could with the guys that they had. They were injury ridden. I'm not going to totally trash on the Lions defense because, what can you do when you're going up against an electric rookie like that and, Scary Terry, who lives up to his nickname, Scary Terry. Dude's revived his career with Jayden Daniels, essentially. But, offensively, I think was the real killer for the Lions. Those two interceptions really set the Lions back. It just you don't expect to see something like that from Jared Goff. You just don't. You expect a guy like Jared Goff to come into this game, get everybody involved, and Jahmyr Gibbs got involved. He had 2 touchdowns. He looked good. He got involved. So the right guys were getting involved. But I'm on Ross St. Brown. He had 8 receptions, 137 yards, no touchdowns. He's got to get involved a little more. Jameson Williams, he had a touchdown too, so he got involved too. But it just those 2 interceptions, man, really set the Lions back offensively. And I think if those 2 interceptions weren't there, it probably would have been a different game. It probably would have been a thriller of a game. Would the Commanders have won if those 2 interceptions weren't a thing? Probably not. It probably would have been a much more exciting game than 45-31 shows. But those turnovers really set the Lions back. I think if those turnovers weren't there, they probably could have walked away with this one, or it at least could have been a much more thriller of a game. And it was a thriller of a game because, in the first half it was back and forth. In the second half, the Commanders really, got away from the Lions. But it was a thriller in the first half. It was back and forth, back and forth. But the second half is really when things really started to get out of hand for the Lions. And the Commanders just really started to cruise away from the Lions. But I think, again, if those turnovers didn't happen, I think it could have been a much closer game. It could have been a much more thriller of a game. And I think the Lions could have walked away with this one. I picked the Lions initially going into this game to win the game. I was one of those guys that thought they were going to blow out the Commanders. And, well, that wasn't the case. I didn't think the Commanders were big time like that. I didn't think Jayden Daniels was big time like that. I didn't think they were going to have, the defensive performance to be able to keep up with Jameson Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs and, Jared Goff with how well he's been playing and all the sneaky trick plays that the Lions do. I didn't think the defense was going to be able to keep up with an explosive offense. Because, again, I said this when I was talking about, the Rams and the Lions. I said this, that the Lions, they have a lot of ways that they can beat you. They have a lot of weapons that they can use to beat you. They're versatile in every position. They're versatile. They have a lot of ways they can beat you. They have a lot of weapons and a lot of, explosive players. So I didn't think the defense for the Commanders was going to be able to handle that. I was wrong. They stepped up, obviously, and they got those 2 turnovers. And here we are, talking about the greatest rookie quarterback season ever, most likely. This win against the Lions really helps cement that. And if he does lead his team to a Super Bowl, he will have been the greatest rookie quarterback I've ever seen, and probably a lot of NFL fans have ever seen. But I underestimated the Washington Commanders heavily. I underestimated the hype train heavily on Jayden Daniels. I underestimated Dan Quinn and the staff, his coaching staff, the job that he's done for the Commanders. This has really been a phenomenal season for the Commanders, and I underestimated that wholeheartedly. Again, I don't know if they have it in. I don't know if the Commanders will have it in them again to beat either the Rams or the Eagles. I don't know if they'll have it in them again to do that. But if they do, hey, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. It's been a great run. It's been great watching this rookie and what he's done for the Commanders franchise. He's really turned that franchise around. Dan Quinn has really turned that franchise around. He's gotten more guys involved. He's got that offense with the guys that they have clicking. And if you look at that offense, they don't really have a lot of superstars. The only superstars they really have offensively is Scary Terry and Jayden Daniels. Now, Diaby Brown is stepping up too, so he's eventually going to be a rising star in the making too. He's stepping up. And Zach Ertz, is one of the older tight ends, but he's still got it in him. Dan Quinn's got that team winning with the guys that they have, and I heavily underestimated that. But again, I'm all for it. I'm all for, the Commanders hype train now. Again, I don't know if they have it in them again to face either the Rams or the Eagles, a team that's, got the Rams have a mastermind in Sean McVay, and the Eagles have Saquon and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. They got a lot of weapons too, just like the Lions. They also have a lot more experience, unlike the Lions, though. But again, those are discussions for another day. But big upset of last Saturday was Washington absolutely trouncing the Lions. No one thought that the Commanders were going to get to the position that they are in now. Nobody thought that the Commanders would even make a big stage like that, much less win on a big stage like that. I mean, this has truly been a historical season for the Commanders. Historical season. Prior to that game, the Commanders were on a huge conference championship drought. Huge conference championship drought. Accompanied by, I believe, the Browns and the Giants. They were, huge. They were on a huge drought. 32 seasons, I believe, without making a NFC Conference Championship appearance. They were on a huge drought. And now, all it takes is one draft pick, and the whole team is completely turned around. The whole team is completely turned around. Franchise is turned around. And it's only going to get better with a lot of these young guys that they got offensively. It's only going to get better with Jayden Daniels and the upside that he has. Him and Dan Quinn can really take this team far. Looking into the future, they can really take this team far. And again, I'm all for it. But it's been a great historical season for the Commanders. It's been a historical season for the Commanders. Again, I underestimated them heavily. That probably won't happen again unless they face either the Eagles or the Rams. I don't know. Again, can't stress enough. I don't know if they have another performance like that in them again to take down another top-seeded team, but I'm all for it. Jayden Daniels, I'm all for it. He's my lock now after that performance to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. He is my lock to win that award now. I'm all for the hype train now, but biggest upset of last Saturday was Commanders beating the Lions 45-31. Again, divisional round continues today with the Eagles taking on the Rams and the Bills taking on the Ravens. I've never been a bigger Buffalo fan in my life. I'm rooting for Buffalo all the way. Bills Mafia, get the job done. Bills Mafia, eliminate the Ravens. Coming from a Browns fan, eliminate the Ravens. But with that being said, divisional round continues and ends today. College Football National Championship is tomorrow. Ohio State taking on Notre Dame. Go Buckeyes. Go Buckeyes all the way. I think that's going to be a great national championship game, and history will be made on either end, depending on who wins. History will be made. So, with that being said, this has been episode 9 of the Life's Playbook podcast. Again, quick little PSA. TikTok has been banned. My podcast's time on TikTok has been short-lived. Again, there's all this news out there and all this speculation that there's going to be a 90-day extension on the ban and whatnot. And if that is the case, I will continue to upload content onto TikTok. But as of right now, all content on TikTok is no more, and I will no longer be able to post content on TikTok. But if you are a fan of the show and you want to, you don't want to miss out on all the episodes and whatnot, again, there is YouTube, Spotify, and there is Twitch. And I am still, always looking for new platforms to expand my show on. So, TikTok, in a way, was a huge dent to the show, and in terms of expanding and getting on more platforms. The ban on TikTok is a huge blow to the show, but it's not the end of the show. Again, I'm always looking for new platforms to put my show on. And again, check out Twitch, YouTube, and Spotify. And follow the official Instagram account if you don't want to miss out on all the content that I will continue to be posting throughout the year. So with that being said, that was the quick little PSA. TikTok has been banned. It has been kind of a blow to the show. But again, working through it, only going to get better and better. This has been episode 9 of the Life's Playbook podcast. If you want to help out the show and reach it and help it reach new heights and elevate the show to new heights, I encourage you to like and subscribe under this video. With that being said, I will catch you guys Thursday for episode 10 of the show. That being said, peace out. The game never ends here at the Life's Playbook podcast.